Do you feel like you used to be intuitive, but you're not so much anymore, or that somehow your intuition used to function, but you just can't seem to find that channel these days? And if anything, it seems like life is against you and you're stuck in your head and really insecure and spinning in circles and just don't know what to do or how to fix it, that somehow you got off track and you can't really find your spirit and you can't connect with that guidance. Well, that's what happens when we're in a growth cycle. Hi, I'm Sonia Choquette, and I'm here to talk to you about today how to reconnect with your intuition when life seems really difficult and you're having trouble. And if you're new to my channel, I'm so happy you're here. I hope these tips and tools are useful. And if you're coming back, welcome back. If you enjoy it, be sure you hit that subscribe button so I can keep giving you these tips and tools. Now let's get on to the subject. Lost your intuition, don't know where to find it? Well, if you find yourself in a cycle where you've really lost your way or your connection to your authentic self, the first thing you can suspect is that maybe I'm in a growth cycle. And because growth is disruptive, and maybe it's time for me to step back and start looking at honestly and acknowledging honestly what is not working in my life that I have perhaps been ignoring or denying, or perhaps I've been gaslighting myself and saying it's better than it is, because this is the biggest reason that we get disconnected from our inner guidance. We try to tell ourselves something is okay when it's not. Doesn't mean you have to change it. And this is an important piece of information, because if you're not ready for change or acknowledging that, acknowledge if something's working, but you don't have to necessarily change until you're ready. So give yourself that option, but do acknowledge what isn't working, because denial and in mental control is the biggest reason we no longer hear from our intuitive self. So kind of scan, do what I call a vibe check. Now, vibe check is just look at your life methodically, be organized about it. Start with your physical body. Is there anything about the way I'm in my body, treating my body, that I'm denying? Often, it's very common that if you are falling into addictions, you're going to lose touch with your intuition, because that creates a toxic atmosphere and your spirit leaves. It doesn't want to be in a toxic energy field. So are you experiencing, there's lots of addictions. There's the overt ones, alcohol, drugs. There's work addictions, shopping addictions, gambling addictions. How about this one? Gossip addiction. So own up to it and acknowledge that this is happening and my ego has gotten out of control and is running my life, and it's running it into the ground. So if you have those addictions, acknowledge them and start seeking help. There's tremendous help. There's 12-step groups. There's books on addictions. Don't deny it. That's step one. Because even acknowledging you have addictions kind of opens up a channel to reconnect to your heart, because addictions disconnect you from where your guidance comes from. Second thing, what are you afraid of? And usually we disconnect from our intuition when we recognize that we have to make a change and we don't want to. People consider change a threat. Makes sense, because predictability is what assures us, and change is unpredictable. But what can be predictable and what can assure you is yourself. I can trust and I can respond to whatever changes come if I'm willing, if I'm available. So recognize that if a change is necessary and is being called for, it doesn't mean it's a threat. It's an invitation to grow. The next thing is that we get afraid that we're going to be disconnected from our sources of support if we make any changes. So in that regard, try to name the people who truly do support you. Recognize what are true support versus sabotage, because sometimes when we want to change and grow, the people in our lives don't want us to. So don't go there. Go to a therapist, for example, who will help you change and grow, or maybe a spiritual advisor. Those are the sources that will help you. But if you go to the places and people who are also afraid of change, they may advise you not to, and then you're really swamped. Next thing is that you want to start naming what you would really love. So here's how you do that. Fill in the blank out loud. If I weren't afraid, I would. And then fill in the blank. Say it 10 times. If I weren't afraid, I'd take a trip. If I weren't afraid, I'd move from this home. If I weren't afraid, I'd look for a new job. If I weren't afraid, I'd end this relationship. And if I weren't afraid, I'd be okay being on my own. Saying this helps you get in touch with what your fear and your control and your anxiety is repressing. So it's the intuition underneath the fear that you're actually starting to voice. Now, again, you don't have to do anything, but just to voice what's hidden in your heart underneath fear is the way back to your intuitive self. Now, here's something interesting about intuition and about fear. Fear isn't necessarily going to stop you in life. Humans are fearful. We all have fear. It's part of our animal self. It's part of our temporary self. However, it's hiding fear that stops you. And when you no longer hide it and you just express it, it's just what it is. Then you kind of clear that, you kind of uncork that throat chakra that lets you get into your heart and hear, energetically feel and sense your intuition. And then, once you acknowledge, this is what I really want to do, this is what my authentic self is really yearning for, it starts to come out like the genie in the bottle, and you start to find your courage. Courage comes from the heart. It comes from the French word for heart, cœur, C-O-U-E-R, and it means my heart's going to take over, not my fearful head. So even starting to acknowledge, if I weren't afraid, I would, begins to connect you with what your inner guidance is suggesting. Pay attention to how that affects your body, because what happens is you start to be flooded with authenticity. You start to remember what your intuition feels like, because it's the real you. It feels good. It opens up. It gets you grounded. So it's a very powerful way to get back. And then give yourself a choice. I don't have to change. I don't have to be uncomfortable and do something different, but I can. Just set it up that way. I'm not forced to, but I do have a choice. I do have a choice. It's interesting. The more we give ourselves a choice, the more we hear our intuition. The more we feel like, oh my God, I don't want to hear my intuition because I don't want to hear what it has to say, then we block all the channels. Just remember, denial is no protection. And if something isn't working for you now, it's not going to work for you tomorrow. You can take your whole life to get around to that realization. It's your life. Or you can then do something else. You can actually pray and ask for guidance and support to make the change that you need to make. And this is really exciting. You start to ask your higher self, help me make the changes. Ask your higher self, help me live an authentic life. Help me make the changes that will bring me more joy. Help me find the courage to move forward, one baby step at a time. Help me find the support people I need to move forward so I don't feel alone. And then ask your angels and guides that are with you all the time to also help you. They will if you ask. Now, these little tweaks will get you back in touch with your intuition pretty immediately, because you're hardwired. Your light got turned out in your heart, but all we have to do is turn the light back on. We don't have to re-renovate the whole being of you. Just turn the light on. With the light of your intuition on, you then can decide if you want to make changes or not, and you will feel with the "if I weren't afraid, I would" statement what your intuition really is saying. It is your superpower. You will not feel something in your heart that you are not capable of bringing about with the help of the universe. So there is the life that is there for you waiting to be experienced. So try these tips and tools. Listen to this a couple of times because it's really layered and see what happens. You will start to physically feel more aligned and better in your heart and being when you turn that light of your spirit back on. It's not difficult. You just have to be curious and begin to open this throat and express what your heart really says. So again, if you are new to my channel, I hope this was useful. And if you liked it, please subscribe and push that bell to let you know when I'll be back. If you are listening regularly, I appreciate you. I love you. Thank you for being here. Please come back again next week where we'll have a new tip or tool to live an intuitively intelligent, authentic, brilliant, joyful life. All my love. Bye, everyone.